Hi everybody, welcome back. Lecture 3, Grasping for Power. This is where we see the samurai do just that, to grasp for political power, to try and realize the cultural aspirations they have of becoming more than just tough guys, of becoming gentlemen scholars who fight, who are respected, who go from the people below the floor to the people who can walk on the floor of the imperial palace, and people who want to be more than just servants to the aristocrats. Let's look a little bit more at these aristocrats, though. The world of the imperial court was in many ways a world apart from the rest of Japan. Certainly very different from the kind of world that most samurai inhabited. Even if they served the nobles, they never really were part of their world, so to speak. Once again, the aristocrats were divided into a series of ranks, with rank 5 and above being able to walk on the floor of the imperial palace in Kyoto. And this was a very, very small, very elite, very in-groupy kind of a culture. Everybody who was anybody wanted to be in Kyoto, in Japan. As I've said before, it's Japan's only real city at this point, with the possible exception of Nara and Dazaifu, a city in Kyushu, which was a trans-shipping point for a lot of Chinese goods that were coming into Japan. But really, Kyoto was where it was at. And if you could be in Kyoto, that's exactly where you went. This is a small group of people, maybe 4, maybe 500 individuals in the city of Kyoto. And the lesser aristocrats spread throughout the country, but really, if you wanted to, you got out of the country and you got yourself a job in Kyoto that is somewhere in the administration, in the imperial administration, or you just kind of lived there if you were rich enough. You never really stopped trying to get jobs if you were a man, or trying to get a advantageous marriage if you were a woman, or some of the more talented women also got themselves attached to the empress or to high noble women and became kind of cultural advisors. Actually, this period is very important. The Heian period is very important in part because the canon of Japanese literature, classical literature, works such as the Tale of Genji, the Tales of Ise, the poetry collections, the 100 Poems for 100 Poets. These became what they were in the Heian period. They were put together by very talented aristocrats, many of whom were women. It's actually women who invented the genre of what we would today call the novel in Japanese literature, monogatari, tales. Tale of Genji is the example of the first novel in the history of the world, written by a Japanese court woman. But this period was important because basically many of the things that today are thought of as quintessentially Japanese, appreciation for the changing of the seasons, appreciation for the ideal of romance in this time period, the appreciation of poetry. All of this was produced by that very, very small group of people in Kyoto. And these people, in many ways, did not communicate like you or I do, or as samurai did at the time. Poetry was a kind of dialogue for court aristocrats. Seasonal references, communication was done in poetry. You always made a reference to the seasons when you sent somebody a poem. Then they'd reply with a reference to something else that was evocative of the spirit of the season, or the spirit of the of what you made them feel. And this kind of vocabulary, this poetic vocabulary, permeated their lives. They were very much into indirect expression. For example, please consider this painting. I absolutely love this painting. It's very informative. So what's going on here is it's spring, and you can tell because the cherry blossoms, or maybe the plum blossoms, are out. Plum, very early spring, but this is probably cherry blossoms. So it's spring, full spring, and four strapping young aristocratic men are playing a game of kemari, which is hacky sack, basically. This is where hacky sack comes from. And what's going on here? Can you guess? This woman, this aristocratic lady, has a crush on one of these men, and she is getting her friend, or possibly her servant, rather well dressed for a servant though, probably her friend, to look at her crush and to describe what is happening. It would be impolite for her to brazenly go and look at him, especially in the light of the day. This is it's just not how a romance was supposed to function. Of course, people lived in many ways that didn't then as now conform to idealized notions of how they should behave with each other, but we're talking about ideals here. So this lady is indirectly observing her crush, and if she really decides that she likes him, that is a very appropriate avenue by which her attraction to him started. People were not really supposed to be, well, for example, men fell in love with women by viewing a line of their poetry. Men fell in love with women by viewing the way that their many-layered kimono draped over the side of their carriage. It was a culture where you very much not only expressed things indirectly through poetry, for example, but where you also thought very indirectly. So if she likes him, or if he likes her, then what would happen is there would be an exchange of poems, and if the two people really liked each other based on those poems, then the man would quietly come to the woman's bedchamber at night. They would sleep together, and he would leave the next morning, write her a thank you poem once he got home, hopefully before daybreak. Once again, it was very kind of impolite to see people in the full light of day. And then she would reply, and then they could mercifully, hopefully, go to bed. This world was a world in which culture doing things the right way, these very many unspoken rules about how people behaved, was one that functioned on the assumption that violence and conflict were base, that one did not fight, that one, even as a man, and in many ways, certainly as a man, would not stoop to violence. Violence was seen as childish. Violence was seen as something that proper people did not do. But violence was also something which was at the very heart of samurai culture. In this way, more than any other, the worlds of the samurai and the aristocrats that they served were wildly divergent. But it's also something that, of course, made samurai useful to aristocrats. First of all, as guards, then as frontier warriors, but increasingly also as hired goons, and we shall get to that soon. First of all, though, yes, violence was a tool for the samurai, very much so. The way that the samurai fought with each other was very much reflective of their origins. Remember, they fought against the Emishi, and they picked up horse archery. So we can get to the point where Takezaki Suinaga calls the way of the samurai the way of the horse and bow. That's their primary weapon. It was a very individualistic way of, or they had a very individualistic way of fighting. The whole prospect of, or the whole site of samurai battle was in many ways similar to a series of very short duels where these samurai just shot arrows at each other until one of them either fled or took cover or was slain. And there were also very many what do you call them, conventions in samurai warfare about how you start a battle, when you start a battle. You are supposed to release a humming bulb arrow, something which makes a kind of a siren-like sound as it flies through the air. That's the signal to start a battle. Then you would rein up, announce who you are, and somebody from the other side would announce who they are, and then you would fight. This is a very, very classic type of battle. You would also use ambushes very often, night attacks, dirty tricks were, I mean, there was no such thing as a dirty trick for a samurai. The objective was to defeat your enemy, to take your head, and to claim the reward from your boss. That is just what you did. And the higher status of your defeated opponent, the more glory, the more rewards, the better for you. This style of fighting depended very much on personal bonds between a samurai and his retainers. Well, basically other samurai of lower rank. You attracted warriors to you through your proven success in battle, through the strength of your name, through your magnanimity, sharing the fruits of your victories with your retainers, and through also strategic marriages. It was very common for samurai to marry the daughters of their vassals, or to marry their sons into, well, basically into other clans, samurai clans, to cement alliances. And speaking of clans, that is also how this system was kept together. There were kinship groups, and then there were these bonds of vassalage. It's not the case that samurai never betrayed each other if they were related to each other. I mean, you have the Yoshitsune to read for this week, and you see how desperately Yoritomo wants his brother Yoshitsune dead. But there were ways in which these traditional bonds, if not prevented fighting between members of the same kinship group, at least mitigated that impulse to betray each other willy-nilly. It was seen as disgraceful to have your brother killed. I mean, you know, Yoritomo was the shogun, so people did what he wanted, but that's not what you were supposed to do, and it was, well, I mean, you see, he had to ask 3 different people in order to have somebody actually carry out the attempted assassination. Then you use your clan as the core of a group, you attract followers to you, and sure enough, off and running towards a successful career as a warrior.